Welcome to Something to Say, where we bring voices from diverse backgrounds who will share their unique stories and perspectives on finding their passion and provide insights on how you can find yours. Join us as host Greg DeShields guides us through this enlightening journey.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Something to Say podcast, a unique platform that amplifies the voices of individuals from various backgrounds sharing their passion. I'm your host, Greg DeShields, and I'm excited to bring you another episode of Something to Say. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to welcome Alex Stratikis, an autistic travel writer, blogger, and photographer of Scottish Greek heritage. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 6 and identifies as houseless, not homeless. We'll learn a little bit more about that as we go further. As he travels the world in a bid to understand himself and this vast, interesting planet we live on. His work focuses on travel experiences for autistic individuals, probably one of the largest underrepresented sections of society within the travel, tourism, and hospitality sectors, a massive undertapped customer base. To date, Alex has worked with a diverse range of companies and organizations in the US, UK, and across the world. He uses his experiences to identify the barriers that exist for neurodivergent travelers and works with travel, tourism, and hospitality companies and organizations that support them to understand what they need to do to remove barriers and increase their autistic customer base. Having started his blog in 2020 during the lockdown, Alex's blog was selected as one of the 100 autism blogs on the web by FeedSpot in 2022. This year in 2024, he was shortlisted as an influencer finalist in Trav Media's Rising Star of the Year category. So let's dive into it. Alex, I am so excited that you have joined us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me today.
So it's been a while since you and I have shared an interview stage, and now we're sharing a podcast stage. So go figure. I am so excited to collaborate with you again.
It's been a while, right?
It has. But
Yeah.
listen, before we begin, because we know you travel quite a bit, just where are you in the world today?
So I'm currently in Scotland. I've just finished a press trip. So I'm here for I think another week and then off to Manchester in England for a speaking engagement. So
Wow. As I said, you are so well traveled. I'm always excited to look at your various posts and learn where you are. And I know that your travel really allows you to be a strong advocate and make a difference for a wide range of audiences. So I thank you for everything you've done. I thank you for joining us today. But in the interviews that we conduct, we like to spend a little time to get to know who the individual is. So we have 3 get to know you questions that we'd like to share with our audience. So I'll start with the first and I'll work my way through. So the first is somewhat, I think, of an interesting one, and I'm very anxious to hear your response. So if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would that be and why?
so I think keeping in line with the travel sort of theme,
Mm.
I would choose Robert Louis Stevenson. And for those that don't know, he was the writer of Treasure Planet and Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. Among various others. I think those are the 2 most famous. And he, lived in the 19th century, from Scotland, I think Edinburgh, but he traveled extensively. And I think spent his final 10 years. So he went to the US, his wife was from there, and eventually onwards to Hawaii. Back then it was the Kingdom of Hawaii. So before it was part of the US, it shows you how long ago it was. And then, yeah, traveled to Samoa, and that was where his final resting place was. And he also traveled to Sydney. And, thinking about the distance nowadays, even, I live in Australia now, how far it is to get there. But even, just it's such a long way, and it's almost incomprehensible to think about him doing all these adventures back then, by boat, back and forward to various countries in the Pacific. I think it's incredible. While also doing his writing. So I would definitely appreciate to have a conversation with him.
Oh, I could imagine. All right,
Hmm.
so one little, I guess, an extra part to that question is, what do you think you'd have for dinner?
Ooh, let okay, maybe I haven't really tried Polynesian food outside of
Okay.
some Hawaiian food. So I think, yeah, I'd be interested to try some new foods. I'm sure he would be able to recommend some.
Very cool. All right, so our second question, if you could eliminate one thing from your daily routine, what would that be and why?
I think laundry. I wouldn't say it's it's not something I do every day anyway, but yeah, I feel it's probably my least favorite chore. And I think when you're traveling as well, it just takes up so much time and effort, especially, when you stay at a place that doesn't have facilities for that, or once one of those coin operated machines, but you've only got card, or yeah, I think that's even when I'm at the home, it's not something I enjoy. I always leave it till I've only got one pair of clothes left. So
Wow.
that's
I
my
could
daily
imagine.
habit.
And I would imagine with the type of travel that you do, that is somewhat of a portion of the day and how it can maybe unnecessarily consume time that you could use venturing around whatever location you're in.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
think I'm one of these people that like to be always doing something, kept busy. I don't like to sit around for too long. And I think with laundry, you're sort of expected to until it's done. So I find it a
It
bit
makes
yeah, a bit anxious. I don't know.
mm. So your third question is, if you had to teach a class on one thing, what would that be that you would teach?
I think looking forward in the line of work that I'm doing, I would love to host a class on travel and tourism, specifically for autistic or neurodivergent travelers. I think that would be fairly interesting. I guess more on an educational side of things, though, I always thought it would be interesting to teach Japanese. I do speak Japanese, and it's not something I ever did personally before, but I know a lot of people are now interested in learning it. And I always give advice to my friends that are learning it. So yeah, I think that would be pretty interesting to do it sort of as a teacher. It's not something I have any experience in, but I think I would find it interesting.
Wow.
Hmm.
Well, both of those would be very interesting for me. I'd register for them. So they both, I think, are quite popular classes.
Yeah.
All right, so beyond the icebreaker, we do want to get to know a little bit more about you. So, and I've asked you this question before, so really, for the benefit of our audience, I'm really interested to hear how you can share the insights with them. So, where did you grow up, and did that affect who you have become?
So I grew up primarily in Scotland, a little bit in Greece as well. And yeah, I think it did affect who I am today. I haven't really lived either of those places since I turned 19, which is when I went to Japan, and then onwards from there. But yeah, obviously, I think, where you sort of spend your childhood is what makes up your culture, for the most part. I would say for the rest of your life, even when you move away, you're sort of, that's like your base point. Um, so yeah, I definitely think it's still part of who I am. Even if it's not where I am living nowadays. So it's still definitely an integral part of me.
Wow, you were quite fortunate to have such a very distinctive difference in those two places to really
Hmm.
add to your perspective. So, all right, so as we mentioned earlier in your introduction, tell us why you identify as houseless, not homeless, as you travel.
So when I first started solo traveling, after I'd graduated and left my office job, um, I wanted to sort of get a long-term job. I found it very difficult. Um, Employment for autistic people was often a challenge. And then COVID put a dent in that. So I sort of took some time out. And when the travel industry opened up again, I wasn't quite sure where to go. I just knew I wanted to travel. Um, and then I started, to do freelance online again. So I sort of took it from there. Um, and that was sort of like on the plane one day they had Nomadland, the movie. I don't know if any of the viewers have watched that, but it is about, I guess, generally speaking, being a nomad. The scenario in the movie was different from mine, but there was a lot of very poignant and I guess influential quotes to me, and that was one of them. Where the character said she was houseless, not homeless. She was just always on the road. So that was something I sort of identified with at the time. I think, now I'm trying to find a bit of stability again. I'm over in Melbourne, and I'm enjoying life in Australia now, but I still get the travel bug, so I don't want to stop really. I just want to have a home base, of course, but keep traveling as much as I can while I'm still younger. I think that's the ultimate goal.
Wow. Well, I can imagine it's just very freeing too, to be able to travel and feel that flexible in terms of how you can visit and really have an opportunity to explore some incredible places without perhaps a lot of the commitment that comes along with being completely tied down to one particular location. But
Definitely.
I wanted to go a little bit further. So what motivated you, beyond obviously the incredible locations that you go to become a writer, a blogger, a photographer? Like, those are three significant ways of really identifying who you are and putting some of your expertise. So how did you decide to do that? And is there one that you like better than the other?
So I think it goes back to COVID again. I'd left translation field. Also my office job was project management. I wasn't enjoying it. And COVID just sort of, you know, turned everything on its head. I always say that. I had a lot of rethinking to do during lockdown on sort of where to go, and where I was right at that moment in time. Because I knew translation, sort of the enjoyment had been sucked out of it. And I had a long, hard think about it over, I guess, a period of weeks or months. And I guess just one day it came to me that, travel was important to me, but as an autistic person, there wasn't much in the way of autistic voices within the travel and tourism space. Sort of using their voice to for the better good, I guess. To make the industry more inclusive and sharing their experiences on past travels through a sort of accessible lens. So I that was just the idea that came to me. It took me a while to develop it further. Obviously having to get the website built,
Mm,
start writing. So yeah, that was the next steps, and then it just developed from there.
wow. So is there any
Mhm.
particular part of that you like more than the other?
I really enjoy writing. I haven't had much time lately since I launched the consultancy side of things. That's taking up most of my time now, and I love that as well. That's more of the behind the scenes stuff in terms of working with tourism boards and
Mm,
organizations on accessibility. But I would say I love writing, I love photography. I do it almost whenever I can, when I travel as well. I always take my camera, and I use them, combined concurrently. So yeah, I guess that would be my favorite,
wow.
but I do love all aspects. Yeah.
I also want to give a big shout out to you. I remember when we worked together in Mesa, Arizona, and I just have to say, when you now talk about moving into the consultancy space, that's
Hmm.
an awesome evolution of your talent and your expertise. So big congrats to you for kind of moving it.
Thank you.
So, so one last question. Where is the most amazing place you've ever traveled to? I think everybody's curious with someone like yourself who's been so many places.
It's really difficult. I think I'm gonna cut out the ones I've lived in because that would be a bit biased, but I would say probably it's really hard. I would say Egypt.
Egypt,
Before I think about it too hard, yeah.
right?
Yeah, Egypt. I spent a month there, and it was the most incredible experience. I got to see not everything, of course, but
Hmm,
a lot of the main sites, and just everything was just wow the whole time. So
wow.
yeah.
I think I've seen some of your photos from when you were in Egypt, so you did look like you had a great time there. So
Yeah.
let's move our conversation to talk about industry, especially now that you've moved into that consulting area. So I have a few quick questions, and then I want to dive into some of the things I know that you really wanted to speak about. So the first one, are there any particular trends that you're seeing now in travel and tourism that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think in terms of accessibility, since COVID, it's came leaps and bounds. I think a lot of people now are realizing what they've been missing out on before. I think accessibility has always been there, but it's been very limited, usually towards wheelchair users. But I think now people are realizing it's a much more broader scope. So there is a lot of advancements happening rapidly. Even I think since I started this, every year I'm seeing more and more coverage, and also more implementations looking at autism specifically.
Mhm.
A lot of sensory adaptations are appearing across the board, in various attractions, transportation, which is great to see. And also, I think an important one that I'm also seeing a lot of is quiet spaces, sensory rooms, those sorts of things, in a lot of venues. Um, some places more than others. I know the US is doing a good job getting those out across most states now, I think. So that's really great to see. And it's not static, it's always evolving. So I'm happy to see that. And also be working, to move that forward. There's always room for improvement. So
Great. And
mhm,
how about, are there some misconceptions that you'd like to clear up? I think especially as it relates to,
mhm.
travelers with autism.
Yeah, I think looking at autism, yeah, I think one of the most important ones I would say is autism is a developmental disability. I think a lot of people automatically assume it's a mental disability or something like that. So I think that's something that would I'd like to get cleared up very quickly in a lot of conversations because I think some people are unsure of that. Um, Also as well, just to be brief, autism is, a spectrum, as they say. So, not even though it's one considered one disability, not every individual you meet is gonna um be the same. We're all unique. We all have our own sets of autistic traits. So
Mhm.
um all fit in different parts of the spectrum. And it's not always the same every time you see the person, it can fluctuate. So
Wow.
I think that's important for people to know.
I know you also helped me get a better understanding and a deeper appreciation of the difference between children who have autism and adults who have autism.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think, a lot of people as well think that children with autism, it sort of ends at childhood sort of thing. But we develop into adults. It's not something that leaves you. Um, of course, like I said, the traits can fluctuate, can change, sensory difficulties, things like that. I know I struggle with things more that I didn't before, whereas other things I struggled with more in childhood, adolescence, I can cope much better with now or
Mm.
prove less of a challenge. So,
Wow.
mhm,
So I know you've mentioned on some of the type of technology that has been implemented as a part of trends. Is there any particular type of innovation that you've seen that you'd like to maybe call out as it relates to the travel industry and accommodating and supporting autistic travelers?
I think one of the best ones I see mainly in Europe, some other places as well, is now it's incorporated with staff training. Of course, I think that's the most important thing, but offering all disabled travelers free visits to government-owned attractions.
Mm.
I think that's a really great one to encourage disabled tourism. Yeah, so disabled travelers are typically poorer overall.
Right.
not just travelers, but like the disabled population.
Right.
Um, so most would not engage with travel due to financial constraints,
Mhm.
particularly autistic. So I think it's great to see that now,
Right.
to encourage people to, I guess, get out there and see these things that otherwise might not be an option for them financially. So
I've asked individuals around this question when it comes to the integration of artificial intelligence in the industry. Do you feel that as an industry that we are trying to catch up with the customer with the introduction of it, or that on the other hand, the customers are really looking for us to give more to them?
yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of disabled people in general are crying out for change.
Mm,
So I think in that regard,
mm,
definitely, um, I would say it's the customer, but also, I think now that the industry is sort of caught on,
mhm.
I think it is sort of a case of, beating the under to the punch. I think everyone wants to do it um now, get into it, but I think it's a case of doing it well, not just doing it.
Right.
Hmm.
Great. So I wanted to move to some questions that are more, impactful to you. So the first one's, I guess, kind of an easy one, but do you intend to keep traveling for as long as possible?
I think for now, yeah. Yeah, I've already got a lot of ideas for next year. This year I'm really busy with different things, so not so much travel.
And how about the idea of, autism and travel in general? How has that really had an impact on that overall travel experience? Has it really meant that there's an ability to articulate your needs in a more effective way as an autistic traveler, or there's more programs that are available to make the experience even that much better? What are some of the observations that you have around that?
I think it's really allowed me to understand myself better as an individual, my needs, my wants, my limits. In that regard, yeah, I think
Okay.
I'm much better at sort of understanding myself now than I was before. It's all about personal development. Um, I'm always learning about the world around me, but also myself and where I sort of fit in with that. So
So I know you've kind of described the experience in different countries, so it's really not a very consistent experience in tourism when you think globally. But is there something that really has stood out that you think the industry could do more to improve accessibility? Meaning, obviously, some are doing better than others and some have a ways to go. But is there something that you would say across all spectrums, whether you're doing it well or you're not doing it well at all? What are some of your thoughts about how the industry could improve on its issues of accessibility and inclusion for autistic travelers?
I would say listen to the autistic community. I think that's the main one. I see some campaigns that, don't consult any autistic people. And I think it leaves a lot of room for things to go wrong, and sort of go in the opposite direction than what was intended. So
Mhm.
um, I think, yeah, it should definitely, anyone in the industry should always consult those that they're aiming to, for these implementations, for these accommodations to be met, in order for them to be successful and improve. You need to listen to the people they're targeting.
Great. And that often comes up when we have conversations about inclusion in the tourism industry, that, you want to get the voice of those who are actually on the receiving end. One more question before I think we can begin to wrap up our interview.
Yep.
So you had a dream to become a translator. So why did you give it up? And do you think maybe you might go back to that?
Um, yeah, again, it was sort of COVID related. I just found it a bit too, it was really hard to get my foot in the door.
Hmm.
with not much help. And I think, again, as an autistic person, um, employment is very much a challenge, very much, especially with the interview stage. I always floundered. I said the wrong things. I couldn't remember the stuff that I should have remembered. Maybe I came across wrong in tone, all those sorts of things. And yeah, I just found that, I had the skills. I knew I did. It was just very hard to show that to people
Hmm.
in terms of what they were asking in terms of maybe the interview or for the trials, so it just wasn't working out. I tried the office side of things, didn't like it. I tried the freelance, but it was just, yeah. I was really sad to give it up. That was my dream, but I think I'm much happier where I am now. So
Well, that's actually a perfect segue as we begin to wrap up our podcast. So, something to say was really designed for us to be able to hear from a diverse range of individuals to talk about what they do and how their passion is really one of the contributing factors as to how they are able to do what they do so well. And to that degree, because we are entitled Something to Say, I'd really love to hear what you would like to say about this idea of passion and how your passion has really allowed for you to do the work that you do and have the impact that you do. So, what do you have to say there?
I think passion is very important when it comes to, work vocation. My passion, is travel. It always has been. To turn that into a career is not an easy job. I think no one expects that now. I think everyone thought that at first, maybe like 10 years ago, but it does take a lot of work and dedication. But I think as long as you have that passion and a commitment, then you can't go wrong. I think it's something I love. I'm dedicated, so I'm gonna keep doing the best I can.
Wow. Well, Alex, I thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing your passion with us today. What you've provided to us is truly informative, and I think without any doubt, will have a huge impact on our audience. So it has been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So that's a wrap for this episode of Something to Say. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations with voices of individuals from diverse backgrounds sharing their passions. So until next time, this is Greg DeShields.
Thank you for tuning in to Something to Say. We trust you found some valuable insights and takeaways that can help you find your passion. Don't miss out on future episodes. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred platform. We value your feedback and suggestions, so let us know how we can serve you better. Keep the conversation going and stay inspired until we meet again. Take care and happy listening.